you. Oh.
Okay, welcome to Gumption. Trudy got really excited and started before I had a chance to click start. So, what were you saying about having lived in Germany and Hans Christian Andersen and all of this?
Oh, I was going to say, it's Denmark. I was an exchange student in
Oh, right,
Denmark
it
when
is
I was
Denmark.
17.
I knew that.
And
I don't know why I said Germany.
So you'd say it, Hans Christian Andersen is how you say him properly. H.C. Andersen. And I don't know what I've done with it, but I've got a book of his fairy tales that are actually in Danish, which I used to be able to read, but, 20,
Really?
20
Wow.
Yeah, well, I was there for a year, so I got to be able to speak Danish and read Danish, but that was kind of really cool because, he's one of their biggest literary names, and they're really proud of him. You go and see the Little Mermaid statue by the waterfront in Copenhagen, and they're everywhere. So it's kind of interesting to.
I think I did go to see his house, or maybe there was just discussion of that. I don't know. It's been a really long time since I've been in Denmark.
Yeah.
I was 10.
You were 10. I was 17, and I went again when I was about 28, 29, something like that.
Yeah,
anyway,
I was 10 and we were only there for like a week. And
I can't remember from when I was 10, so I'm quite impressed that you're actually even attempting to remember.
I remember when I was about 6 months old, so yeah.
Oh my
have a
goodness.
really good memory.
You're one of those. I have a friend who says that she remembers being born.
That would be
My mom
hard.
told me once that I remembered being born when I was little, but I don't remember anymore.
Be
That's
glad.
interesting.
Why would you want to remember that?
I don't know.
No, I can't imagine it was very good.
Anyway,
Back to fairy tales. So we were going to talk about the old fairy tales.
Yeah, so which fairy tale is your favorite fairy tale? I'll
My
go
favorite
first.
fairy tale.
My favorite fairy tale is, what's it called? Oh my goodness. I don't remember what it's called. This is completely ridiculous.
Well, what's it about?
Yeah,
So it's the one where there's a princess and her mom sends her to be married to like the prince of the neighboring country, and she's traveling there with her maid, and her horse talks to her, and the maid, like the princess is really kind, and so the maid essentially forces her to give up her position. So when they arrive at the court of the prince who's supposed to marry her, everyone thinks she's the servant, and her servant is the princess. So
I've never heard of this.
The Goose Girl. So she
The Goose
spends
Girl.
like the first month in this new place as the Goose Girl, and her horse can talk, and so her what?
Oh, it's the Goose Girl.
Yeah, it's the Goose Girl. It's my
Who
favorite.
wrote that one?
I like it because there's justice.
It's in Brothers Grimm.
It's a
Is it a
Brothers
Brothers
Grimm,
Grimm
and
one?
it's pretty
Okay.
gory. But the other reason I like it, so the bad person, the maid who's deceitful and everything, at the end, her punishment is exactly what she said she would do if she discovered someone had done what she had done.
Which is what?
So the king like is testing her and tells her this story as if it had been someone else, and asks her, still pretending that he thinks she's the princess. So if someone did this, what would your punishment for them be? And she's like, well, I would have them put in a barrel full of nails and dragged through the streets until they were dead. And that's her definition of what justice should be for that crime, and so that's what happens to her. And so there's a very satisfying sort of justice to it, because, I would never want that to happen to anybody. But at the same time, if you think that that's what the appropriate punishment is and you did it, then you should be punished how you think is most appropriate. Right?
Wow.
Clearly, I am on the side of the original.
That is a very common trope.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that at one of the Cinderellas, where the stepmother and stepsisters are asked what they would do, and they say something, and then they get, I think it's like hot
Well,
iron.
there's a commonality where a lot of versions of Cinderella, the stepsisters and the stepmother get punished by being put in a position where they have to do all of the work that they had been making Cinderella do.
Mm.
So it's that same kind of, it's fair, even though it might sound like it's extreme.
I tell you what, though, those, for example, Brothers Grimm and even like the H.C. Andersen stuff, they were so much more gory and so much more brutal than anything. And even today, when we go back to those stories, they're often kind of softened up and made a bit nicer for our kind of, you know. And I always sort of think,
but I don't like them when they're made nicer.
Yeah.
That's not entirely true. I enjoy the Disney movies, but I enjoy them for pure entertainment. I don't, and yeah. If I'm gonna read a fairy tale, then I go read the originals.
I just find, like, so for example, we watch a lot of Tinkerbell in our household, and and the new kind of Disney princesses stuff like Sophia the First and those ones, and I sometimes worry that there's this kind, and maybe there was just the same in the old fairy tales too, I guess, but there's this feeling that good will always win out, and that that someone who is, that there's never, any hardship is always kind of not very bad, and they always kind of, everything always ends up happily in the end. I don't know. I just sort of feel like kids get this idea that if they try hard or if they're just good, then good things will happen to them, and I sort of wonder whether that's a great moral lesson to be teaching kids these days. At least in some of these older stories, it was kind of like, if you go into the woods, prepare to fight the wolf or something, or something bad will happen. Whereas now it's kind of like, if you go into the woods, nothing bad will happen to you, but you might meet a scary wolf who turns out to be your best friend or something. Like it's sort of, I don't know. I don't know if that's.
I think that the purpose of a fairy tale, historically anyway, the purpose of a fairy tale was not to entertain. The purpose of a fairy tale was to teach you something. And I think that now the purpose is to entertain. And I think that that's a problem because I think it's impeding children's ability to develop a sound moral compass.
I mean, there's still an intention to teach something. I just think the lesson is more politically correct.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
yes and
when
no.
you look at the old ones, when you look at the old tales, because my favorite is the Six Swans, and so I went and I
like that one
looked at the different versions, and it's really interesting. They all have like similar tales, and there's even some older ones where like it's interesting to me because I'm curious about this, and so it's like this tale that is like Hans Christian Andersen. I didn't say it right. Sorry, Trudy. Has the Wild Swan, his version. And it has the wicked stepmother who gives away their brother, there's this trope that I don't quite understand. It's like, so there'll be like 6 brothers or 11 brothers, and then so the queen will be about to be having a baby, and the brothers or the father will be going away, out sometimes in the fields or sometimes out to war, and it'll be like, okay, so if you have a girl, put this up, and if you have a boy, put this up. And apparently, if they have a girl, they're going to come home, and if they have a boy, they're just going to all scatter to the 4 winds. Who knows why? And so inevitably, there's confusion, or else someone malicious puts up the wrong thing. So they think they had another boy, so like the brothers all go off, or the father doesn't come home. Why he wouldn't come home? Because it's another boy. I don't know. It does not explain that. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, well, what is that? And then the girl, the sister, finds out, like someone tells her when she's old enough to understand that she used to have a whole bunch of brothers. And she's like, well, I have to go find them. And she feels bad because it's her fault. Her fault. And so she has to do like these really, like you were talking about, Trudy, these impossible tasks. So it's not like easy for her. And in all the versions that I was looking at, like the version in Italy and the version in Norway and the Hans Christian Andersen, there's a Finnish version, there's an Irish version, There's even a Libyan version, which was kind of weird. Andrew Lang had that in one of his fairy books. But then the Romanian version is called Bewitched Brothers, and there's 6 brothers, and the girl is supposed to stay quiet. She's not supposed to talk, or are there? No, I think there's 7 brothers. She's not supposed to talk for 7 years, 7 months, 7 days, 7 minutes, something like that.
Right.
And at the end of the 6th year, she's like, "This is ridiculous. Why am I not talking?" And the instant.
So who tells her not to talk?
Yeah, she's not supposed to talk. That is
like how to break the spell.
So there's a spell. Where does the spell come in? Is it just when she discovers that all the brothers have been put under a spell?
Well, so that's an interesting thing. When I look at the different versions, some of them are put under a spell like right away. Like in one of the versions, the king actually says to the queen, "If you have a son, I'm going to curse our older sons." Why?
Wow.
I have no idea. And then he curses the sons because he accidentally thinks he had another son, and then he gets home and he's like all sad. "Oh darn! I wish somebody didn't make that mistake." So then the girl, she knows early, but sometimes it's not the parents that curse them. They get cursed later on. So when the sister finds them.
The one that Juliet Marillier version is an evil stepmother.
Yeah, and all the versions I've read, it's always been a wicked stepmother who kind of sends the brothers away because she wants her own family to kind of be inheriting. She wants to get more power. It's interesting that in some versions it's the king. I've never heard that before.
No, there's only just one that I was looking at that was that way. And it's one time it was the mother, and how the mother would not know what she had, I don't know. Oh, the mother was mad because her sons ate bread. And
as you would, be angry at children for eating bread.
But what's funny to me is in all the other versions where the sister has to be quiet, because not all the versions have the sister have to be quiet. And I mean, I remember the first time I read that, I'm like, oh my gosh, how could anybody be quiet for that long? But they ramp it up because it's a story. So not only she's quiet through when the king, the handsome young king sees her and wants to marry her, and then when her mother-in-law is plotting against her and walls her up in a castle wall, and she doesn't talk, and then when she's put on, the couple of stories have her put on a stake, accused of witchcraft and put on a stake, so you kind of know when those were done, and she's busy knitting these shirts, out of thistles, or out of
something that's thorns, wasn't it? Like that stung her fingers, and she was knitting it.
Terrible. Sometimes it's something, I forget, it was like moss or something. It's these weird, impossible 7 shirts that have to be completely done before she can speak, and she's busy finishing up the sleeve of the last one as they're tying her to the stake, and then she finishes it up, and the brothers come down, the 6 swans or the 11 ravens or whatever the story has, and they come down and she throws the shirts on them and they turn into handsome young men and save her. And in one version I was looking at all these versions. One version I really liked because it's like she finishes the shirt and she speaks up for herself as opposed to being saved by the brothers turning into humans again. And she says, "I'm innocent, get the king." And so all the people who are ready to torch the pile are like, "Okay, we'll go get the king," except for one person who's like, "No way, I want to see it burn." So then the brothers, save her, So I'm like, now that is a storyteller.
That's funny.
You need that, really. But and I just I guess I got my imagination when I was a kid, trying to think. It's like you have to be quiet because your brothers' lives depend on it, or they're going to be stuck as birds forever. And you've almost gotten to the end of it, but if you don't speak up, you might die. So it's kind of it really puts it all out there, and it takes gumption to finish up that last sleep.
The latest version of that I read was that book you're talking about, Aurelia, the Juliet Maria one, and
Mm-hmm.
I love that book, and it's basically the story of that fairy tale, but it's done in kind of novel format, and it's a big thick book, and so it just goes really in depth. And in that version, I'm pretty sure it's in there. She doesn't quite manage to finish the last shirt, so
Yeah.
one of her brothers
Oh,
ends
yeah.
up with the arm of a wing of a swan and the rest of it. But he turns out he's the one that's all kind of magical and sorcerousy anyways, but actually just adds to his kind of mystique as being that kind of magical one. But yeah,
Here.
pardon?
It makes him sexy.
Yeah, sexy
Because, I mean, they all
swan
have to
wing.
get wealthy. All the brothers, once they finally, come back to humanhood, have to get wealthy and have their own kingdom. And But
Yeah.
it is really interesting to read all the different variations, because I only really knew the one story,
Yeah.
that was.
Well, and I don't know. I think it's good to explore all of the different versions of a fairy tale. But I think most people don't do that. I wish they would. It would make life so much more interesting.
Wow.
But that's hard to East of the Sun and West of the Moon. Someone did a novelization of that, and I had never heard of that fairy tale, and I really enjoyed reading that book. I'll have to look it up, see if I can find it. Because I know Shannon, who was it?
While you look that up, I'm going to say one of the ones I liked as a kid is Emperor's New Clothes. And I always loved the idea of that. He's being told by someone that they're invisible clothes, and he so wants to be part of, or not to be look stupid, that he lets that person continue to kind of fool him. And it's not until a little kid yells, "He's naked," that everyone else goes, "Oh yes, so he is." Like there's that whole feeling of following the crowd, being a sheep, and then it just takes one little kid to kind of go, "Nah, he's naked," and it kind of, and I would love that, and I love the concept of him kind of being so foolish that he couldn't kind of have his own opinion, so that he just thought that it must have been him and it wasn't the person talking to him. I just thought that was that was something that really resonated with me as a kid, I guess.
Well, what resonated with me about that one was that it was the kid that spoke up. I mean, there were plenty of adults who were like, boy, he kind of looks naked, even though he's really proud of these clothes, but they didn't say anything. It was only the kid, and that could have gone very badly.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I forgot.
And there's that thing of like when you're in a crowd and no one else is saying anything, so do you want to be the one that says something? And I suppose there was also the aspect that he's the emperor, so you probably get your head chopped off if you're saying anything bad about him. But yeah, anyway, that was an interesting one. And the Princess and the Pea was the other one that used to fascinate me. Just that idea of some innate princessness, that you would have a bad sleep for sleeping on a pea.
Oh, my mother would always call us, because I had 3 sisters. She would always say, "Oh, listen to the Princess and the Pea," whenever we complained about anything. So we knew that very well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So do you have a favorite movie rendition of a fairy tale? Not necessarily a Disney movie rendition, but a movie rendition in general.
Takes of Cinderella. I like the Drew Barrymore one.
I like that one
same.
too, but I really, really like the new Disney one, the live-action Disney one. The one that's got Kate Blanchett and was directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
It has Helena Bonham Carter as the fairy godmother. It's wonderful.
I don't know if I've seen that one. I can't remember. I try to see them all, but I don't always get them unless they're on Netflix.
I also really like Tangled, the Disney version.
Oh, yes.
Because in the beginning, in like the first song, she's me, pretty much. There's a few details that are different, but like basically all of her interests are my interests. And then Finn, the Eugene, the like thief guy,
Flynn.
ends up with
Flynn
at the end,
Rider.
he's like my type. Like, it's my fairy tale. It came out when I was in college. I watched this with my college age friends, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like a little kid again. This is wonderful.
And do you know that movie? I really like it too. It's one of my favorite ones. We've got it on Zoe's iPad and stuff. But it didn't do very well at the box office, and there's people who don't really like it, and I kind of think, I don't know what it is about it, but it's not as popular as some of the other ones, and I think it's quite a cute version, so I don't know why.
Definitely has gumption for sure. I mean, she's not somebody who just waits for things to happen to her. So I don't know what you never know why people do and don't like things, because sometimes, especially if it's a favorite story, you like your version. So if anything isn't your version, you like it less.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Excuse me while I yawn. I don't know that they did anything that was hugely out of character or anything. Anyway, I don't know what it was, but it was cute. I agree. A cute version. There's a few versions of like.
You cut out again, Kelly.
Is that Wicked? Was that Wicked? No, not Wicked. What was that
There's
called?
There's one called Mirror, which has Julia. Oh God, what's her name?
Right. No, that's not the one you were talking about, right?
It's not the one with Anne Hathaway.
Yes, it's got. Oh no, not Anne Hathaway. The girl with the big eyebrows and Julia Roberts. She's the evil queen.
No, Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway. So in it? Am I making that up, or I know there were two different ones that were released the same year, and they were produced by different people.
There was one that had.
They were really different.
There was one that had the girl from Twilight in it, and it was kind of like the hunter or something, or that was really similar time to something else.
I didn't see that because I don't like her.
I've only seen it on TV, and it was a long time ago, so I couldn't tell you the story. But well, it's obviously the story of the mirror. Who's that? Snow White, isn't it?
Mirror is Snow White.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, but there's a lot of ones of Red Riding Hood out there too. A lot of movies that are, her story of going into the forest and the wolves and stuff. Some of them are quite dark.
Well, or erotic even. For some reason, that's one of the tales that everybody likes to make now sexy.
Werewolves, I suppose. It's easy to make werewolves. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, some of the fairy tale ones that get kind of updated these days into a different type of story. It's kind of interesting. I'm trying to think. Some of the stuff, although I'm thinking of Shakespeare now. I'm completely going off fairy tales. I was thinking 10 Things I Hate About You, that movie.
Yeah, I like that movie too, but it's not a fairy tale.
Not a fairy tale, so I just forget I mentioned it. But there's a few like that.
It's still that trope. It's kind of like a fairy tale trope, where the hero sets out to win the heroine because of her money or what her father is promising him, not for anything about her, and she doesn't want to have him, and he needs to best her. There's actually quite a few of those.
Yeah, that are around. So what are the fairy tales? So there's all the kind of ones like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Cinderella.
And there's Snow White and Rose Red. And there's Briar Rose. And
some of the Hans Christian Andersen.
A lot of really good ones that don't, like there's Arabian Nights. And when I was little, I had a giant book of all of the stories that she supposedly would tell to the Sultan in the story of 1001 Nights.
Okay.
Which was kind of awesome. Because I don't remember if it framed it. Like, it might have had the beginning of the story at the beginning of the collection and the end of the story at the end. I don't know. But it was a fun series of stories that isn't necessarily what you would traditionally get in Western.
Right, because the stories were Middle Eastern and South Asian.
Right.
Yeah, they're actually fairly old stories. You know, the first English.
So,
I'm reading this from Wikipedia. I'm not this smart to remember it. The first English language edition was 1706. So that's
mm.
pretty old.
Well,
Was
and a
Aladdin?
lot of these are village tales that people told to children to teach them whatever it was they needed to know about wherever they happened to live, and are much, much older than that, that were
Oh,
oral tradition that people like the Grimm brothers wrote down
yeah, oh, yeah.
and edited heavily. Or not so heavily, depending on who they were.
So, was Aladdin and the 40 Thieves story? That's one of the
Well, Aladdin
1001?
and the Wonderful Lamp and Ali-Baba and the 40 Thieves.
Alibaba. Oh, okay.
Sinbad the Sailor. They were not part of the Knights.
They weren't. So those are 3 separate stories.
But they are Middle Eastern, which is why we probably confuse them.
I think that they are. Yeah. Oh, there was one other one that I wanted to talk about, and we have it as a story that I read to Zoe, and it's the I don't know what the original story is, but it's the these two little, so it's a man who makes shoes. What's that called? A cobbler.
The shoemaker's elves.
Yeah, the shoemaker and the elves, and it's like these little elves. He basically he's so poor he's only got enough leather for 1 pair of shoes. So the night before he's tired, he's exhausted, his life is going terrible. He cuts out this one piece of leather into the shoes, and he's going to make them in the morning. And then in the morning he wakes up and there's this beautiful pair of shoes that have already been made for him. And and Zoe has it, and she likes it, and she asks for it all the time. And the best thing I love it is that they're 2 little naked men basically that are in this version of it. So the next day the shoes that were first pair of shoes gets bought by someone who's so happy and pleased with his shoes he pays lots of money for them so he can buy enough leather to make 2 pairs of shoes, and then so the same cycle happens until he's wealthy cobbler again, and he's all fine again, and then him and his wife go, actually we should be figuring out who's doing this for us, they've
Right.
made us wealthy again, so they stay up that night, like that, all this other time they haven't bothered to stay up and see who's been making these shoes. They leave this, which is the thing that's funny about the whole story. But anyway, and they see that it's these 2 little naked elves that are doing it, and so they decide to make them some clothes. So they make these little tiny outfits for them, and then the next night, instead of leaving leather out for them to make shoes with, they leave out these clothes. And so these little tiny elves put the clothes on, and their decision is, now that we've got clothes, we don't need to be cobblers anymore, and they leave again, and they stop doing the cobbling for them. I was just like, I don't even understand what the story is, the moral. It's like, we're not naked anymore, so we're going to leave. Like,
their job was finished, and they got their reward.
But they sing this little song where it's kind of like, now that we're not naked anymore, we don't need to be doing cobbling, la la la. And it was in there, and so the story isn't.
So if you work hard enough in the beginning, and then you get enough
someone will
cover
give you
your
some clothes
forever, then you can stop working.
Cracks me up. Anyway, I love it. But it's such a cute little story, and it's just it's quite painstakingly says that he has fallen on hard times through no fault of his own. So it's not the cobbler's fault. He's a good man. So they're just helping out a good man who just fell on hard times, which I quite like, because often, maybe it doesn't. No, maybe not. I was going to say often there's a lesson there about
A weird little story, because what is the point? I mean, the cobbler's not making the shoes. He's just going to sleep.
Yeah. No, it was more that he was a good person, so they were going to help him or something, and that was what it was. But it's I don't know.
The elves and the nixies. I mean, talking about older versions of those tales, they were things people were scared. People were scared of getting on the wrong side of them, not thanking them. Like especially the Irish would be leaving things out for the elves to, because they didn't want to get on their bad side, because they do the opposite, destroy things at night instead of.
Yeah.
But we don't hear.
I mean, that's.
Those.
Well, that makes me think of another story that I quite like, is Rumpelstiltskin.
Oh yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah, and
I like
I
him
would,
on Once Upon a Time. I like that show because I think they do a good job of combining the darkness and the like real life lessons with the sort of mythical entertainment level.
mm, yeah,
But
kind of
I
they
also
still keep
stopped
it.
watching after like 3 episodes into season 2 because I got annoyed at how much flip-flopping the evil queen was doing.
I watched the first season and I quite liked it, but I didn't love it, I think, and I just there was so many other things to do, so many other programs. It wasn't on the top of my list of must watches, and so I just stopped watching it. I mean, it's clearly popular because it's still going, isn't it? People still watch it.
Okay, it's still going.
Yeah, and it's got that other one called Grimm now too, which I haven't actually
I
watched,
love
but
Grimm, but I can't. I'm behind and I can't catch up because it's the only channel that doesn't have back episodes on Hulu or Netflix.
mm,
So
no,
I don't know. I'm like 2, 3 years behind and I can't catch up. It's very sad.
yeah, maybe someone will start repeating it soon. What I was going to say about Rumpelstiltskin is the version we have is quite cute, and it's basically the king here's the miller bragging about his daughter who can do all sorts of crazy things, and it's like, my daughter is so beautiful, the birds come out and dance around the moon at night time, and my daughter is so beautiful that, no, my daughter is so amazing she can juggle hedgehogs whilst baking fruit loaf, and stuff like this. Like he's always making, literally those are the kind of claims he makes, and then the king's walking past one day and the miller says, my daughter is so amazing she can spin straw into gold. And the king is like so greedy that he wants her to do it, and so she does it. Rumpelstiltskin comes and helps her, blah blah blah. And then, but every time he does it, he threatens her. He says, "If you don't spin this straw into gold, I'm going to throw you to the royal crocodiles." And so these royal crocodiles are there, and it happens 3 times. So he gives her more and more straw. And then the third night, she promises her firstborn child once she's the queen, which she agrees to because she thinks she's never going to be the queen. And then the king comes in, sees all the gold, and says, will you marry me? And I'm kind of like, the girl goes, yes, sure, I'll marry you, even though you've been threatening me with the crocodiles. And then so she has they get married, she has the baby, and then Rumpelstiltskin comes back and blah, blah, blah. She guesses his name and everything. And then at the very end of the book, it's really funny because it's kind of like they basically agree that she's going to rule the people because she's much better at that. He goes off and hangs out in his counting shed, counting all his gold because that's all he wants to do. And then when he gets older or something, essentially you kind of say he lived a long and happy life, and then one day he was walking past the crocodile enclosure and he was never seen again. The implication being that the crocodiles ate him. But it didn't matter because the girl who'd been, whatever her name was still ruling with her son, and she was actually the good ruler and he was just the loop-de who. But it was just funny. It was just like it all kind of worked in together. Like, and it was quite a good way to end the book because he'd threatened her with the crocodiles and then he got eaten by them himself. Anyway, which was nothing to do with
what we were talking about of being punished how you think you should be punished.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or how you threaten others of being punished.
Yeah.
But originally, that's not part of the original Rumpelstiltskin or anything like that. But it's just funny to see. I've seen stories where Rumpelstiltskin has become the hero, and
really,
I'm not. Yeah, where he's
wow.
I know it's actually what's a novelization, like it's a based on the story of Rumpelstiltskin kind of thing, like but it was like, yeah, he's a tortured prince trapped by some spell where he has to do things a certain way, and he comes across some girl, and I don't know how it's good. I haven't read it. I've just sort of seen the blurb and stuff, the book description, and thought that's an interesting concept because I can't really picture him as the hero. Don't know about either of you.
Well, if it's the Once Upon a Time version, then sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Really?
No.
No.
It depends on the episode. I mean, this is the thing that got me to stop watching Once Upon a Time is that they were doing who was good and who was bad changed too often, too quickly, and for not a good enough reason. So like Rumpelstiltskin would be good one episode, and then the next episode he would be bad again. And the same with Regina and the evil queen, her sort of dual personality. Sometimes, oh, okay, she's been treated horribly. That's why she's a horrible person. Okay, so now she's trying to redeem herself. And then the next episode it would be like back to being bad for no reason.
Mm.
And that flip-flopping felt like flip-flopping and not like actual character development.
Yeah.
To me.
So different people writing the episodes and not keeping a track of the someone not keeping a track of the series story bible properly, not maintaining the storyline in the way it should have been maintained.
Or maybe they just didn't have enough like high level like meetings with everyone there to catch everyone up on what the ideas were and what order the ideas were happening in.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it should be kind of, I mean, I guess they should have an overarching kind of plot for a series, for a season, and they should be following that arc. But it sounds like they're just doing it episode by episode and different adventures happening in each episode, rather than using the characters in different ways at different times without any kind of, I don't know, anything linking them together maybe, which is what a good series would do. I was looking at, I've got a book on, Scottish fairy tales, and I was looking through it, trying to recognise any of them, and I don't. It's really interesting. I thought I would know some of them, but I just don't even recognise any of them. One's called Kate Crackernuts.
Kate
Crackernuts, yeah. Crackernuts, that's her surname. Yeah. Kenobi Dick, The Knight of Riddles. I haven't actually read any of them, so I shouldn't be looking through because it's not going to be that helpful, but it's just fascinating where they all come from. That the one that we all really like, the Swan one, is actually an old Celtic one, isn't it? So
yeah, I think
yeah.
I don't know which one it is, because I mean it does have since it has a Romanian version.
And
it has a Libyan version. I don't know, but I mean it could be, because so they can track them better now. I keep waiting for this nice book that puts them all into order. So far, they're just like, I was trying to look at some of the older ones. And so the Milkmaid and Her Pail is an old folk tale. And the interesting thing, I'm reading Wikipedia again, that the ancient tales of this type exist in the East, but Western variants are not found before the Middle Ages. So there's like a Sanskrit version of this. It's a daydreaming milkmaid.
That's interesting, because you don't think of a milkmaid as being a Middle Eastern concept, do you?
No, and that could be the Westernization of it, because the theme is a poor person daydreaming of future wealth, and then when they get carried away by their fantasy, I'm reading this again, they break the container on which their dream is founded. You know, like the pitcher that gives milk, and the golden goose and things like that.
That's interesting. Oh, the golden goose is another good one. That's another one I like.
Yeah, and Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah.
I like that one too.
There are
quickly before we move away from the Milkmaid and the Pail, I don't know if this is actually true in this case, but I always remember going to an art exhibition and there was a painting, and I can't remember from what kind of era, but like 1700s, like a few hundred years ago, and it was a girl sitting by a water well, and then beside her was a water, like a ceramic water vase that she dropped, and it was cracked. And so it just looked like it was this picture of this young girl who's got this cracked water pail, and she's, she obviously can't draw the water anymore that she was supposed to be drawing. And apparently in that time, the underlying message of that painting was that she was a girl who'd just lost her virginity. Like,
Really?
Yeah, so in that era, they would have certain symbols that would mean something to the people looking at the painting, and so someone of that era looking at that would go, "Oh yeah, no, that clearly means that that young girl has just lost her virginity." And so I wonder whether something like that, the pail, the milkmaid in the pail who's broken the pail because she was daydreaming, maybe that is another subtext that we don't know now, but maybe meant something to people. I don't know.
Right. She
It's
was
a really interesting way to look at fairy tales in general too. I mean, with tarot, there were very, very well understood symbols that were used.
right.
And when it was popular back in the day, nobody had a manual for what it meant. Everyone just knew. And I think that's probably true of most fairy tale symbology, is when
Or
they
a lot of people knew.
for
People like me
education.
would have been like, "Oh, she broke her jar. What a shame."
Yeah.
Then
Well,
someone
even
had to explain it to me.
or even something that would mean something in one area but not mean the same thing in another area. So you would like, and it wouldn't be the same large geographic. Like the global village that we have now is not the same. So it would have been like, some area in northern Germany would have a different understanding of a fairy tale to somewhere in middle of Germany, or somewhere over in France or something. Like wherever you were. There was no one in New Zealand at that time, really. So it was, or maybe there was, but
And
no one.
there's a lot of really interesting academic writing on fairy tales and symbolism, and there's a lot of analysis that has to do with like fairy creatures. So like there's one interpretation of Snow White where Snow White is like a fairy changeling, and her dad like is in love with her because she's a fairy, so she can make anyone who's male fall in love with her. But her mom is like, "You stole my place," and that's why she becomes evil. So it's not actually necessarily a stepmother that's wicked, it's the mother who's wicked. And that's why she's
That's
trying to get rid
interesting.
of her.
And so the father thinks that he's in love with her, as in a sexual way. So it's like a
It's
bit
unclear.
incestuous.
It's
There are
unclear. But
actually
there is an
quite a
implication
few.
that there is that meaning to it.
Yes, there are quite a few older tales where that's the case. The father is having inappropriate designs on his daughter, and so she runs away or needs to be rescued in some way. But those are usually older tales, and then they usually change it, to be someone else that's not, stepfather or something
Well,
else.
and it's also interesting that if you have that interpretation and then you change it so that the stepmother is the one who's evil instead of the stepmother trying to send the daughter away to save her from the father, that changes entirely the meaning and the cultural ramifications of that story.
That's very true.
Mm.
I forget. I was looking at the. I look at Sur La Lune, which is a website that it talks about the different versions of fairy tales, and I forget which one it was. It might have been Snow White, or it was maybe not Snow White, but there were a few that were like, what? And it's one, it's the older versions.
Yeah.
Not the modern ones. Like I think once we get up to like 1100s, there's no fathers trying to marry their daughters. But we didn't mention Rapunzel. I really think Rapunzel is a very interesting. I know we mentioned Tamara,
Oh yeah.
but Rapunzel is that whole idea of like the bad actor in that one is a woman.
Mm.
The witch who again she takes somebody's child because the person was stealing her her greens from her garden.
Some of the versions of that are very gory.
Very well, especially like I remember the prince who climbs up and rescues her and whatever, and they get all cursed and he gets his eyes put out.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's wandering around blind and they're separated, and I don't know if they ever actually get back together in that version, but it's kind of depressing.
Mm.
Yeah,
But
sometimes they're lost to each other forever, and sometimes they eventually find each other, but like he can't recognize her anymore.
well, no, that's a common
Recognizes her by her voice or something because he's like attracted to her because she's singing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Is
and
it? Does she have the same magical hair that she does in the Disney version?
no, her
No,
hair
that's
is
the only
magic.
version I know that has that, which I
Her
think
hair
is
is
really
magical. It's
interesting.
just long, long enough for him to climb up like a rope.
I think
Mm.
for me, this is something I just realized that the Disney movies that are based on fairy tales that I like the best are the ones that they have messed with the most. The ones where they've changed things the most. So like Tangled
Okay.
and
They've made the
The Princess and the Frog, Princess Tiana. So they actually take the fairy tale and turn it into a story that is complex and relevant to modern society. Instead of, like, the older ones are more true to the fairy tale that was the most popular version of that fairy tale for the time. But it's not really, because they had to make it PG, it loses meaning to me. Like, it's very pretty and it's entertaining, but I don't watch them very often. So,
Like
like,
the Frog Prince.
and
Mm.
Snow White and the old Cinderella is a little bit better, maybe, but I don't watch them very often. The ones I watch the most often are Tangled and Beauty and the Beast, and I guess Beauty and the Beast is more traditional. Um, but but yeah, the newer
I
ones
think
I find more interesting.
what I find interesting about Disney and their versions of stuff is that the original Disney stuff is actually quite brutal as well. Like it's not like you look at old Mickey Mouse stories and stuff, and they're not, you know, Donald Duck was a horrible little duck,
Right, but
and
those were targeted to boys in a time where
point.
boys were expected to be more physically brutal.
yeah.
And the
What I was
fairy
going to say.
tales were targeted more towards girls who were supposed to not know that physical stuff happened ever.
Well, I was going to say that even when I watched the Snow White version, and it's an older version, so it was done. I don't even know where it was done, but you know, it a lot old, you know, like maybe 60s or 70s or something. I really wouldn't know, and you can kind of notice a really strong difference between the way that one was put together than the way they would put together something now. Like now, it has to be all
Snow White
haxy
and the
daisy.
Seven Dwarves is 1937.
Oh, well, there you go, even older than I was thinking. But like they, that's just crazy. 1937. I didn't want to say anything too early because I thought that they would be too. I was thinking 50s, and I was like, surely it can't be the 50s. 37, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that is a lot more. That like I think it's just this whole need for everything to be rainbows and unicorns and everything happy is really something that's quite recent, say maybe the 80s, from the 80s onwards or something, or 70s maybe even. And before that, there wasn't such a need to have everything so happy, happy, happy. And I think in some ways we lose something by pretending that everything is happy for our kids. Do you know? And I don't say I want horrible things to happen, and I would expect a happy ending. I just feel like it's almost they don't have bad enough things happening to them or something. Does that sound really grim? Like,
I
I don't know what
mean,
your thoughts are.
I mean, nowadays, we don't have. I mean, some people do, depending on where they live. It used to be that, if someone died, you took care of it in the home. You watched them, you dressed them, they lay there on your dining room table until you buried them, and or whatever you did. And so we've sheltered ourselves and our children from a lot of the reality that the people, not even just children, were already facing when they heard the older, more Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what we do about that because, we wince to say anything, like that. It's like how, but kids eat up horror movies.
Mm.
They love it when all the teenagers die one by one.
Well, and I think
Yeah, like Hunger Games. I mean, look at
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
it's just
Well, and
like,
I think that's true, and I think that the reason that kids are not exposed to the real fairy tales has nothing to do with the kids being interested or capable of dealing with horror. It has to do with parents thinking, "Oh, this is too brutal for my kids to see." So instead of learning things from fairy tales that are real, they're watching, superhero movies, which are, in my opinion, equally brutal.
yeah, I suppose there are places.
I
Yeah,
mean,
but my point.
disconnect, I think, that a lot of people have, and you guys don't, but a lot of people I have come across in my life are like, really, you like the Grimm's fairy tales? They're so gory.
Hmm. I just find, I mean, I just know where parents come from, and when you talk about that in that way, I'm kind of like, I want to protect Zoe from bad stuff, and I don't like her watching certain programs because they're a bit too gory, and there's things like that. Like my Zoe's cousin watches Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and
Hmm.
he's about the same age as her, so he's 4 months younger. And I've always sort of thought, oh, that's really violent. I don't know whether that's that great, but he loves it, and it's the kind of thing that he calls them the angry turtles, which I think is really cute. Uh,
They are teenage turtles. I mean,
yeah,
just
yeah. So, but I mean, maybe that is better. Maybe him watching that is more real than Zoe watching, I don't know, Caillou or Dora the Explorer or something. Who knows?
I also think there's a difference between watching something that's gory and reading about something that's gory.
Mm. I think reading about it is more gory.
I agree with you, actually.
Because it's active. You're the one
It's
imagining it.
funny because I really like the gory Grimm's fairy tales, like the real fairy tales, the ones that are what they were. Um, but I don't really enjoy reading horror that much. It's
No,
not
I
my
hate horror.
favorite.
Well, see, maybe because I feel like the Grimm's fairy tales, they're quite imaginative. They're quite kind of they're quite complex. There's stuff happening. There's a moral story behind them. And as we've said about several of them, something happens in the beginning. It's kind of like they get their just desserts
Well, and
almost, like they.
with a fairy tale, you know that you have a happy ending, no matter how bad it is in the middle. But with a
Yeah.
horror story, you're expecting
Everyone gets
a
killed.
bad ending. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah,
that's
it's like people just get randomly killed in gory and unexpected ways until one random person survives for whatever reason to live on and tell the story, and sometimes not even that. And it's just kind of like there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no kind of structure to it. It's just gore for the sake of gore. Whereas actually fairy tales, like you say, have a structure, have a reason, have a happy ending-ish. Although some of them don't. Some of them just have an ending that's good for some people. But like, we were watching one. It was a fairy tale that was reenacted, and it was basically this statue, I think, and he had like golden eyes and golden bits on him, and there was it was just, I can't remember the full story, but it was like basically there was a sparrow or something, and it was left behind because it was weaker than the others, and he started getting this. He said to the sparrow, "Look over there. There's someone who's got no money," and he said, "Pluck out my eye and give that gemstone to this person, and pluck out the other eye and give it." Basically, there's this statue that ends up with nothing, and then the bird dies, and that's the end of it. But all these people have been given gemstones to help them out. But it's just like the two main characters in it are essentially, it's nothing for them, and I don't know. I wasn't really that fond of that story.
Right, trying to figure out what is this telling me? Nothing good.
No, give everything you have to others, and then you're going to die alone and sad.
Right,
It was.
and there's, that's a really common. I mean, not that live alone and sad, but to be generous in your travels is a really common trope because, like, a lot of stories I was
creatures in
thinking
need
is you
Creatures
do
and
something
multiple.
and they return the favor, down the road.
Yeah.
Literally. They save your life.
I'm using that in Sorceress and Beastly.
Yeah. I mean, writers often use that too. You think about not necessarily being kind, but something happening in the beginning that gets used down the end to save you in the end. And if that is because you've been kind to someone who's helping you now, that's that's part of it.
But
I guess that's a common.
What is it? Toads and Diamonds, I think is what the story is called, where there's always a real daughter and a stepdaughter, but sometimes they're just actually the mother's two daughters, the not so nice one and the beautiful one. The beautiful ones are always good. Did you notice that? But
I know that drives me bonkers too.
But so like the one daughter will go and she's doing the task nobody wants. She's going into the forest to the witch or whatever, and she does all the things and she gets rewarded for being kind and then she comes back and then the lazy daughter is like, oh, well, I want some of that too. And she goes, but she doesn't do the kind things. So when she goes, she doesn't do the kind things. So I think one of the stories, the girl speaks, and there's a golden coin.
Diamonds come out.
And then
the other one speaks and toads come out.
Yeah. I always liked that story.
Yes. No, I do. I remember that now. When you first talked about it, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I remember reading that story and just the idea of toads coming out of the mouth, but it was because she'd done all this bad stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Diamonds coming out of my mouth aren't that appealing, but I can see why.
The end result might be all right. But imagine every time you speak and diamonds come out. That actually would be unpleasant. It might be more fun to be the person next to them or with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm thinking of that scene from Harry Potter where Ron is vomiting slugs. Like, diamonds coming out when you're speaking is like a sharper, more painful version of that.
Yeah.
And speaking as a feelings.
Yeah. It's like, do you ever see, it's like is it the King Solomon? One of the, the one that touches everything he touches turns to gold? Is that from the...
Oh, the King Midas.
Midas, yes, the Midas touch, that's what it is. And then there was that TV advert that was a while ago that was this guy and everything he touches turns to M&Ms. Was it M&Ms or Skittles or something? So he's sitting at a desk and he touches something and it all just becomes M&Ms. Have you seen that? No? It's quite a funny ad.
It's a commercial. Yes, it is very fun. And then there's also Pops or something. Yeah. They've gone some weird directions with those commercials.
Yeah. Well, I've only seen one of the version, but I just think something that seems like a really cool thing, like being everything you touch turns to gold, or spewing out diamonds every time you speak. Actually, I mean, in the context of it could have been frogs, maybe it's good, but in the context of general, it doesn't seem that great. General life.
Turning straw into gold. That leads to so much trouble for so many people.
Yeah. I mean, they're really crazy. I suppose in the context of it, fairy tales. I mean, I suppose they've been making them up for ever since humans have been alive. They've been fairy tales. Whether they were just told out loud over the campfire or whatever. But there are some pretty amazing stories out there. Like they're imaginative and they take crazy things. Like who would have thought of having some girl vomiting diamonds and it's just, where does that come from? It's just quite it's quite neat to think of that. I don't know, that level of imagination.
I have a question for us to ponder and return back next week with thoughts. What's the difference between a fairy tale and a legend?
Well, a lot of times the legend, there's an implication that it is a real story, but so far back that we don't remember all the details.
Perhaps. But the other part of my question is the purpose of a legend and the purpose of a fairy tale different, or do they have the same educational purpose? I don't know.
Fairy tale seems to be more base, like more the common people, whereas a legend seems like something that would happen up the higher.
Right, but a lot of fairy tales have to do with princes and princesses and.
But told from the perspective of a commoner looking at them. Do you know what I mean? Like it's for them.
Okay,
It's the
I get
masses. Yeah.
So I'm
Anyway.
thinking of legends as like Robin Hood and King Arthur, where there is actually a place in the tale that where someone else has to step up and save a lot of people. Whereas fairy tales seem more about the individual, being
Okay.
better themselves.
So in a way, fairy tales are to teach individual right and wrong, whereas legends are to teach societal right and wrong.
Yeah.
So like fairy tales would be for learning how to be a good person, but legends would be good for learning how to be a good leader.
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah.
Or to step up for your culture, not just for yourself or your immediate family. Like Zorro. I'm just trying to think of legends, and they seem to have like a real strong cultural base. And King Arthur, there's got to be more. There's more legends. I'm just not. Joan of Arc is, even though she was real, I think a lot of what she did is told in a legendary way. It's very cultural.
Maybe it's something we can think about this week for next week and have a look at.
Yeah, because I think we all have things to go do in the real world.
Yes.
But let me.
Thank you guys. I want to say
check really
thank you for
quickly.
another interesting
We are
discussion.
next week. We're talking about Agent Carter, and this will be an educational experience for me next week because I don't know anything about Agent Carter at all. So
I don't know
he
either.
qualifies as being legendary. I have no idea. I'm very excited to learn from you guys who he is and why he's relevant.
She, isn't it?
She is she.
I don't know. I'm Agent Carter sounds to me like the head guy from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I'm extrapolating. All right. See you all next week.
All right.
Bye.